Hello. So I wanted to do a vlog, something I've never really done, on specifically Refold and learning Japanese. So I've been learning Japanese now for about 3 months, and I wanted to make a video talking about where I'm at in those 3 months, and also I wanted to talk about uh, things I would do differently only 3 months in. Because I find that if you go online and you watch videos about people who have done Refold, specifically in Japanese, there's a lot of videos I think about people a year in, 2 years in, 6 months in that would, and they're talking about tips and stuff. And while I think that's really valuable, I do think beginners like to hear from beginners. And as a beginner myself, I wanted to talk about things that or concerns that really I struggled with early on. Um, and to say like I'm not an expert on uh, language acquisition, I'm not an expert on Refold, I'm not an expert on Japanese, I'm not an expert on anything, but rather I wanted to make a video about just beginner tips for beginners. I don't know how much of this is going to be accurate. I don't know how much of this is going to be correct, but I thought it'd be good for people who are struggling in the early stage one or very low comprehension levels of Refold to hear from someone who is around that level or just have gotten past it. Because to talk about my progress and myself for a second, in these 3 months, I've really done quite a bit. Right now, I'm watching Kamen Rider Wizard, and I'm at a comprehension level where I understand like not 50%. That's a little high, but if you go on the Refold website, I'm on around stage 3 comprehension. I understand a lot of the dialogue, a lot of character dialogue, um, a lot of jokes, a lot of the action scenes. Basically, every scene that isn't an exposition dump, I understand really well. I get the and even the exposition scenes, I get a gist of them. Like I can somewhat understand what they're saying, but I'm at the point now where watching Kamen Rider, it's just like watching TV. Like I'm not thinking of it like, oh, I'm immersing, oh, I have to study this, oh, whatever. I'm just sort of watching a TV show, which is crazy to me that I'm even discussing this because I still remember 3 months ago watching Death Note, which was the first show I watched, something I had seen before, and I just didn't nothing. Like I would get maybe a sentence like every 3 episodes, and that was it. And now I'm like, I've had 5 minute sequences where I understood every line, and like sure maybe like the nuance, and there might be some like play on words there that I'm just not getting at all. And maybe I miss a couple words here and there, but like I understood very long segments of shows. Uh, it's a it's a really good feeling, and I didn't know I would get here. Manga is still very difficult. Ippo, I'm currently reading Hajime no Ippo. Forgive my pronunciation. I haven't really practiced speaking. And Aku no Hana. Haru no Hana I just started, but I'm doing very well in. Ippo is it's difficult, but I'm still very much enjoying it. So reading and pure listening are hard right now. I'm watching Kamen Rider and some other shows, but I'm mainly watching shows with subs right now. So pure listening when I listen to YouTube or watch YouTube rather, and manga is still very difficult for me right now, but it's all enjoyable. That's the thing is that I'm enjoying all of it, and I can't believe that only 3 months in, I can just watch Kamen Rider with subs, but like it's good. It's fine. I can understand it. So sorry if I ramble a bit. I haven't done a vlog before, but yeah. So that's about where I'm at. Uh, and also now I want to talk about Refold and its methods and just quickly some stuff I think I would change. Because Refold, I will say this. I think Refold works. Originally I was very skeptical because I think a lot of people are like if you're someone like me who grows up in a majority English speaking nation and English is your native language, you've probably never really immersed before. Um, and it's something I never really thought about. And you read it, and a lot of it is just like, oh, just keep immersing, just keep immersing, man, just keep immersing. You're not understanding anything, but just keep immersing. You'll get there. And it sounds like, oh, they're messing with me. This is a lie, but no, it's true. Like I said before, I understand so much of the TV shows I watch now that I'm amazed. So I wanted to talk about just how with immersion, how much it works and how much you just kind of have to trust the process. I'm gonna go through a bunch of things I've thought of. I have a little list in front of me, but one of the main things is that with immersion, early on, I would say, yeah, it's best to watch shows you've seen before to help with your comprehension. But just it really is just immerse, just consume the language, make it as comprehensible as possible. Obviously, only using target language stuff, but just consume the language, and it'll come to you. I remember really early on, I would watch a lot of videos like what I'm currently recording, which is again crazy that I've gotten to at least even this point, which is not far at all, but it's just to show that anyone can do it. Um, I would watch videos, and I would always be like, how do I be like that guy? How do I be like, oh, immersing all the time, and that how do I make immersion easier for me? How do I, comprehend more? And there is no real answer. You like, sure, TV with target language subs is as comprehensible as you get, but if you already know that, it's just immersing. I can't, I can't even say immersion. Um, it's just you just have to consume it. There's no easier way, and that's another thing is that people think, or people can think going into it, like I did myself, that it's really easy. Is you're just watching TV. Like TV is considered a lazy thing. People watch TV and they're lazy, so it sounds like it'd be really easy, but I think for myself, it's more difficult than traditional learning. Uh, you sort of you don't get a feedback loop with immersion. You just consume, 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 and understand a little bit more each episode, a little bit more, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing with all the hours you accumulate. And with traditional learning, you have grammar drills. You did the speech earlier. I don't know, depending on how familiar you are with Refold, generally in at least the Japanese Refold guide, they don't recommend speaking for a very long time. Not very long, but for a time where until your comprehension is relatively high. So it allows you to speak earlier, which is cool. It allows you to, yeah, like grammar drills. It grades you often, or you can physically write things that are graded. With immersion, there's no one grading you. There's no feedback loop. There's no praise. It's really just you start consuming. It's very much a self study, which is hard for a lot of people. It's hard for myself, and I would say I'm someone who is good at self studying. So for those early stages where you're just wondering, does this even work? Is it even, will I ever get there? You will. You just keep immersing. I would recommend, as the site does, watch shows you've already seen before for a bit to build up that comprehension, since you've seen it before, so you understand what's happening, so you can then focus entirely on the language instead of trying to figure out, what the story's about. Sorry, also if I seem a little, how do you say, high strung. I've just never vlogged before, but yeah, I think it's something. It's really good to do. It's a really good immersion is I think a really important step of learning a language. And I've tried learning Japanese before with other things. So I spent about 3 months in Refold, about three, and maybe like one or two traditional learning throughout my life. This is very scattered. Um, and I would say with traditional learning, it just didn't do anything for me. Like it, and that's another thing I want to make clear with too is that with I think a lot of people in a lot of VODs. Like if you've seen Matt vs Japan, who is the I think owner or whatever of Refold, he did traditional learning for a long time before doing immersion. And I think I've seen some other VODs where people have done traditional learning. So I think it's very common for beginners to think, oh, you have to do it and then do immersion. My 1 to 2 months of traditional learning, I forgot so much of, and I thought it was so basic that when I decided to do Refold and try this, I had to relearn all the kana. Like I had no knowledge. I was basically going in completely blank. And with immersion and starting Refold, in terms of traditional study, nothing. Like I've done maybe less than an hour of reading Taichim in these 3 months. I sometimes no I would sometimes early on look up particles, so like no or te or ta, but I again forgive my pronunciation. I'm sure I'm butchering it. I'm just not practice speaking, but what I would do is I would look those up and just give myself a general idea of what they meant and just let it be solidified in immersion. Like Tara, for example, I read on it and it just didn't make sense to me. I tried reading it in Tai Chim, I tried reading it articles online, did not understand it. But that little kernel, that little idea of what it's supposed to represent, the more and more I read, I'm not going to say now I completely understand it, but when a character says it, I generally understand what they mean. So even for grammar and traditional study, I think immersion works. You don't have to have any previous immersion. It's previous traditional study. You don't have to have any of it. I basically went in completely dry, completely new. Forgotten everything. These 1 to 2 months were not serious at all. That was also self-study with Tai Chim. So trust the process. Immersion really works, and that's the main thing. But there's also some other stuff I want to talk about. These are going to be more specific, but I think they're really important. Um, for one thing, you're going to be doing a lot of immersion. Just again, that's the only way to really get better. Just more hours in, more hours out. So I think one really important thing is to learn the best way to get content easily. I would recommend, and I'm going to put them in the description of this video. Um, in terms of what content you like, that's really going to change where you need to go. But I would really recommend getting programs like MPV with the add-on MPV Acius. The site Kitsuneto, and what's the last one? Oh, and Yomi-chan. When you have MPV with MPVacious installed, Yomi-chan, you can just make sentence mining so fast. I sentence mine in less than 20 seconds, and I can look up words when I'm watching in like 5 seconds. It's so efficient. It's so fast. It's really worth the time going through all the tools that this wonderful community has made and really getting them to work on your system. Like it took me, the current setup I have now took me like an entire morning to do. I'm not a great person with computers. I'm probably better than average, so it might be brutal for some people. I mean, it was still brutal for me, but it was worth it. It's worth it to spend time getting those tools ready and making sure that they work because they are just so efficient. Looking stuff up, making flashcards is so easy for me that like I don't. It's just it's so easy. It's so fast, and I'm sure it saves me a lot of time. It just it's just really good. So again, Kitsuneto, that's a site where you can get Japanese subs for a lot of anime and tokusatsu shows, and I'm sure some dramas maybe. MPV is a media player that allows for a lot of add-ons, and MPV Acius is a add-on designed around language learning and language acquisition. It has a there's way better videos to watch if you're interested in this stuff, but I would recommend getting that. Looking up on Tetsuneto for subs that you want shows to. Shows that you want subs to. MPV Acius for language acquisition when you're watching and its add-ons. MPV and its add-ons, specifically MPV Acius, and Yomi-chan is sort of like a very quick, very easy to look up dictionary. It has a wonderful thing where it just copies any of the text of a show you're watching when you combine it with MPV Acius, and immediately gives you the sentence there, and any word you hover over, it'll give you the definition for it. It's wonderful. There's way better videos if you want to learn about this stuff. And then there's some other stuff I want to talk about. That was more about tools, and sorry if that wasn't the best. There's way better videos if you want tools. Another thing I want to watch. Sorry, another thing watch. Another thing I want to talk about. Something I think is really important is what you should be immersing with when you're when you're just starting out. Because I think I disagree in some ways with the Refold website. Um, or mainly the main thing is when you're just starting out, I would recommend to not do intensive. Intensive immersion is, if you don't know, there's two different types of active immersion, which is when you're like aware, focusing on the content. Free flow is just watching it and absorbing as much as you can, and intensive is looking up everything that you do not know. And the reason I don't think intensive is good to do at the start and not good to do for a very long time. Like I do it now, but 3 months in. But intensive at the start, because you're looking up everything you don't understand. That's everything. Like you're just looking up every word in every episode, and it just takes forever. And I think you're spending so much time in English that what's the point when the Japanese you're basically just long in a long way doing machine translation. I think it's very important, but you have to build up your comprehension. Um, you have to build up your comprehension to that point where intensive starts to really work. Like I think if you could free flow with the show and get a gist of it, like get a stage 3 comprehension, then I think intensive can be really worth it. But until then, and this is something I did, a lot of basically everything I'm going to talk about is stuff I did. Don't do intensive for a bit, just free flow. And even with free flow, Refold recommends looking a word up about every 2 to 3 minutes. I didn't even do that. For the first, like, 3 shows I watched, I would look up a word here and there. Like, I would look up, like, if a word was really jumping out at me, like, oh, this is a really important word to know. My brain just wants to acquire it. I would look it up, but there's some, like, I watched, like, 3 to 4 episodes straight of Mob Psycho, and I didn't look up a single thing. I did not search anything. I did not look up anything. I just watched 3 episodes in a row, just like, this is so good. I have to keep watching. I have to keep watching. I was just so intense. So invested in the story. Even without really knowing the language at that point, it was just more the visuals and like how it was being visually told to me. Um, but it it is like just sorry, I lost my train of thought. Um, but I wouldn't even be concerned, yeah, with free flow with looking up everything. Just for a while, just take in the language, just hear it, just read it with the subs. And another thing, a short thing on top of that, it's more important to have fun when you're watching something. Fun is way more important than comprehensibility, especially at the start. At the same time, though, you do want it to be as comprehensible as possible. So I have very shonen tastes. I like shonens. I like Kamen Rider and Super Sentai. So I generally like easy to understand shows. So if you like more, and I do like more mature stuff, but I vary. If you only like mature stuff, it's going to be more difficult. But it is best to try and find, even in mature stuff that has very simple language, because comprehensibility, it'll help more if it's comprehensible and fun than if it's just fun. But the worst is if it's just comprehensible and not fun, you just won't want to do it. So make sure it's always at least fun, but always try to make it as comprehensible as possible. The other thing also, I maybe read, but I would say wait on reading, and especially don't read anything that you have watched, like an anime adaptation, and then you go try to read the manga, or don't read anything that you've read before in your native language, because when I was starting out, I would want to read because I love manga. I liked it more than I liked it more than anime, but right now I'm watching more. But the thing is with reading is that not only is it harder because you aren't getting those actors and their emotions to help you figure out what they're meaning. Another issue is with reading, and specifically reading something you've read before. An episode is always going to be 24 minutes. So even if you're looking some stuff up, if you're pausing to read the subtitles, you're probably not going to spend more than like a couple minutes more every episode. Generally, things are going to happen at the same rate that you're used to, and on your rewatches now in Japanese, you're basically just going to be getting the same sort of deal. Whereas with manga, um, the difference is that reading is a different speed for everyone. I can the first manga I tried to read was One Piece. It's one of my favorite manga ever. But the problem was I'm so used to reading One Piece in English, and I could just I could power through so many volumes a day in English. But when I was starting out, especially, and even now, it takes me so long to read. And really, when I was like maybe a month in, it took me forever to get through a page, and that's just not fun or not enjoyable because if I've been reading for an hour and I'm still on the part where Zoro, he's chained up on the thing, that's not like in an hour in English, I'm out of East Blue. Like it's that might be a little fast, but you know what I mean. It's you're not getting the same pacing, and it's really slow. And then you turn the page, and there's just another page of words, and you're like, ah, oh, this sucks. So I would say wait on reading for a bit because it's harder than just reading subs and listening to the audio. But also, when you finally decide to read, maybe a couple months in, read something you've never read before. Read something that you're interested in, but read something that you have not read before because it just makes it so that this is your first experience and you're not used to a faster speed. You're not used to faster pacing and whatnot. Um, and another thing, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be like an age adder. You don't have to like, oh well, screw English. I don't need English anymore. I'm not gonna do anything in English. I'm gonna spend 8 hours a day in Japanese, and then the rest I'm gonna do passive immersion the whole time. You'll just burn out. Like I'm not the best refolder. I am not. I've read today. I've read some manga today, and that's really about it. I did have work today, and usually on my work days I don't do as much. I give myself a bit of a break, and that's important because as much as I love Japanese and I love learning it and I love doing stuff in Japanese, it's also just nice sometimes to play a game with friends or watch something you really love in English that you just can't get in Japanese. Uh, and I see a lot of beginners who and I'm like this too. And again, like everything I said, this is stuff I've done. And I see a lot of beginners who are just like, no, everything's gonna be in Japanese. Never seen the English again, and it just burns you out. Your brain can only do so much. It can only have so much energy. It's like a lot of what Refold talks about is that you're learning language like a child, and the difference probably between you and a 2 year old is that you don't nap, or even if you do, you don't nap as much. Like your brain just gets tired and just wants to stop. I'll watch 4 hours of TV in Japanese, and my brain's just like, I can't do this anymore. So don't keep pushing and burn yourself out. Take a break. Maybe just have English for the rest of the day. Maybe spend 2 hours in English and go back if you're really hungering for more Japanese. It's 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 really enticing at the start to just go, 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 because you want to get to that comprehension level, but it'll happen. I aim for about nowadays I'm trying to aim more for 3 hours a day, but I originally just aimed for about 2 hours a day. I would watch about 6 episodes of anime a day. That was about it. Maybe 7 or 8. Like depends. That really depended on how much I was just having fun that day, and not really do much on my work days. And in 3 months, I'm at a comprehension level where I can just watch my domain and enjoy it. And I know I should be a lot further in these 3 months if I really kept pushing, but at the same time, I might have burned out. And I would rather enjoy the journey rather than burn out and just not get anywhere. So you don't have to be perfect. Don't fret like, oh, I've only done 3 hours today on my day off. I have to do 7 hours. Just do as much as you can. This is really about self discipline and it's a self study. So just keep going. And another thing with it is that in immersion is very different. It's a very different type of learning than I think a lot of people. I'm sorry, there's like something in my. Give me a sec. I'm sorry if this video is all over the place, but another thing is that with immersion, it's a very different type of learning. Uh, with traditional learning, which is probably what most people have done throughout their whole life, including myself, you get graded, you have exams, you have tests, and you are told this is correct, this is wrong. So with immersion, Anki is a part where you study to use vocabulary, sorry, to study to learn vocabulary. And I think early on, it's very easy for people to assume that more Anki and less immersion is the way to go. Again, I thought this myself, but it's the complete opposite. If you only have an hour to do either Anki or immersion, just do immersion. Your Anki streak does not matter. Immersion is what matters. It's way more important. Always, always immerse. I mean, doing Anki every day is very important. I aim to do it every day. Sometimes I miss it, but immersion is more important. It's the more important side. Though Anki is very important, and I wanted to talk about two starting debts. There's a lot on the market. There's Tor 2, Tor 2.6K, Tor 6K, JP 1K version 1 and 2, or it's just version 2 now. There's Remembering the Kanji or Refold Remembering the Kanji. I would say what I would stress personally, what personally really worked for me. I'm at the sentence mining stage now, but what really worked for me was remembering the kanji. I specifically did Refold's Remembering the Kanji, that deck. But there's also the book, the original book, or there's a Remembering the Kanji Anki deck. Any variation of it, I think a beginner should do. I think it's the best Anki deck, period, in terms of early language acquisition in Japanese. It's just turning kanji from scribbles to characters. It breaks down all the kanji. Excuse me. It breaks down all the kanji and gives them a shape, a distinct. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I'm not used to speaking for this long. It gives them a very distinct and formed shape. It breaks them down into things called radicals. It makes them very easy to remember, and it really turns them from scribbles. I originally tried doing Tor 2.6K, and they were all just scribbles to me. But remembering the kanji and then doing a vocab deck, I did JP 1K, but you can also do Tango N5. Really, or Tor 2.6K is really nice. But above all, I would recommend remembering the kanji. I think it's really, really good. And yeah, that's really all I have to say. I'm sorry if this was really rambly and really weird. I haven't vlogged before, but I thought, and I didn't want to like edit this because I'm because I'm lazy. Um, so I hope some of this was useful. I hope to be back in maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months. I don't know when I want to do another one of these and talk about where I'm at there. But I'm happy where I'm at for 3 months. Um, it. I'm glad to have done this, and largely I think everything that the Refold website says is correct. The things I said here of like learn the tools and don't intensive at the start and don't read stuff you've read is more just like there are things that people will probably figure out on their own. I just think that I wanted to at least voice these opinions, and if I can help out one person who was struggling in the same way I was, that's cool. But yeah, I'm happy at my comprehension level, and I'm having fun, which I think is the most important thing of language acquisition. Like if you have to learn Japanese or any other language for your job or for your spouse, um, that's a whole other thing. But Japanese is way too difficult if you're not having fun. This is something that's probably gonna be with me the rest of my life. Like, and if I don't enjoy it, what's the point? But yeah, no, I'm happy with it. I'm happy understanding as much as I do of Kamen Rider. I really hope this was helpful. Bye bye. I'll see you in 3 months. Take care.